Very pleased to have with us from the Washington Times, Emily Miller. Emily, good evening. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Well, Cam, you and I have had this conversation before. On Monday nights, it's very challenging for me to pause The Bachelor to do this show with you.
I know, and I really appreciate this. I understand the sacrifice. For some of our guests, it'll be National Football, the College Championship game, BCS game. For you, it's The Bachelor.
It's The Bachelor. It's the season premiere of The Bachelor.
It's the season premiere.
Yes, this is huge. This is why I was able to do your show for the last several months on Mondays without any kind of conflict, but I had to push pause on the live Bachelor in order to get on this show. Because you know what? Reality TV and guns, they go together very well.
You know what? I think, Top Shot proves that. And listen, I really owe you one.
Well, maybe we need to do a reality show about guns, and then I could do both my loves together.
Maybe you should just, we should talk about like some sort of bachelorette thing, but
with a gun.
Exactly, but shh.
I shoot the guy.
We need to take this conversation off air here before somebody steals this idea.
Instead of when you on this show, I don't know if you know enough, but they give the girl a rose.
I know nothing about
next episode.
Yeah, I know nothing about The Bachelor.
Okay, well you get a rose, you get to stay for the next episode if the guy likes you. Well, what I could do with the gun is I could shoot the other guy in the foot, and then they know they'd have to get off.
No.
It would be entertaining.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah. Now let's talk about shooting yourself in the foot here. Let's talk about what the Attorney General in the District of Columbia is doing. Because you write about this. David Gregory goes on national TV. He's waving around a magazine that is banned in the District of Columbia. Now, you could think that that's a stupid law, and David Gregory should not be investigated for having this magazine because it shouldn't be against the law to have this magazine. But the law is the law. Sorry, try not to sneeze. Thank you. The law is the law, and there is no David Gregory exemption, except apparently
there is no rich, famous anchor exemption.
Yeah, except apparently there is.
Apparently, right.
Yeah, and so you write about one of the 105 other individuals, at least, who have been investigated, have been arrested for having a magazine that is capable of holding more than 10 rounds. James Brinkley, he's a U.S. Army veteran, and I got to tell you, we talked. I went through his story a little bit, Emily, before you joined us, and this is a travesty. I mean, everything that Howard Kurtz said about David Gregory applies to Mr. Brinkley. He wasn't going to.
The reason I even had this story is when you were out last week and I was on the show, and we had Richard Gardner, the well-known firearms attorney, on. Because we were talking about the David Gregory case. And he said, well, I just had this client who went to trial over high-capacity magazines. And as soon as the show ended, I called Richard Gardner. I'm like, find your client. I'm going to interview him. So it was through NRN News and Cam & Company that I even found James Brinkley. And basically, the story happened exactly like you said. It was even more horrible is, as you know, David Gregory, the NBC anchor, called the police department before the show and said, can I bring an illegal 30-round magazine onto the show? And the police obviously said, no, you don't get it. There's no exceptions.
Right.
And then he did it anyway. And it's been 3 weeks, and it's continued what Kathy Lanier calls an ongoing investigation. Now, I personally, I'm not a police officer, but I think I could have just looked at the DVR and seen him say, this is a 30-round magazine, and he's sitting in the Washington Bureau. I think it would be a pretty easy investigation to finalize.
Sure.
Instead, 3 weeks later, they're still giving this cover-up. Now, Mr. Brinkley also, like David Gregory, called the police department ahead of time, and he said, I'm dropping my family off at the White House for a tour, and I want to go to the range afterwards, and he's a federal employee now, and he's in training because he wants to take a test to be the U.S. Marshal. So in order to do that, he had to do holster training, so he put his holster on, and the D.C. police said, in order to transport your gun, and they actually surprisingly gave him correct information, it needs to be unloaded, locked in your trunk, encased, and he did all that. You know, he said he put a giant padlock around the box. It was his Glock. It was not his carry gun. It was just a Glock 22, and he had 2 magazines. They're 15 rounds, which are the standard that come with the gun. So he put those in, separate from the gun, and no ammunition anywhere in the vehicle. So he is absolutely legally transporting. He doesn't stop to drop off his family. He doesn't stop and park and walk around. He just pulled over the Secret Service at the corner of Pennsylvania and 15th and asked an agent, an officer, about the baby here. His wife was carrying the baby with her, and because strollers are not allowed in the White House, he wanted to make sure he wasn't going to leave her with a car seat and the baby in it that he couldn't carry. So when they pulled over, the Secret Service agent saw the empty holster and said, "You have a gun." And he, being a law-abiding person and know he's doing it legally and how the police told him to, he said, "Yes, I do. It's in the car, in the trunk." Well, all hell broke loose. He said he'd never seen more federal agents in his life. Like DHS shows up, police car sirens, and this is the middle of the day, huge tourist attraction, everyone's standing around. They handcuff him and take off his shoes and leave him there for 2.5 hours. And he kept saying, "Look, I'm a federal government employee. At least put me in my car. I don't want tourists posting my picture on Facebook." You know, he knew he was innocent. Instead, they arrested him, took him to the precinct, booked him, threw him in a holding cell for hours. And he finally got out, and this Attorney General's office wouldn't let this drop. I mean, there was absolutely zero evidence that he was stopping, and the prosecutor kept insisting that he would have walked around, that he didn't plan on going right through the city. And at trial, because I'll say the prosecutor refused to give him let the charges drop, even though the police actually told the Secret Service these aren't our charges. And they wouldn't let it drop, and he wouldn't. Richard Gardner's lawyer said, "I couldn't get him to take a plea deal because he kept saying, 'I'm not guilty and I don't want to plead,' which, God bless him, you know. I'm really glad he did that. And he incurred a lot of legal costs, took it to trial, and then the prosecutor tried to insist he wasn't staying. And then the kicker to me was the prosecutor from the Attorney General's office tried to prove that he could somehow go through his car, go back to the back while seated, unlatch the back seat, which who knew? He said, "I didn't even know the back seat could unlatch," while his 2 kids were in it, reach back, open the gun case, take the gun, and still not have ammunition.
Right.
I mean, the worst he could have done was taken the gun and thrown it at the White House fence. I mean, I think that is like the big threat here. It's ridiculous. So what's quite amazing is the judge in D.C., which is, I think has been highly unlikely in gun cases here, acquitted him of all the charges. And so even though he was out the time, he still hasn't gotten his gun back, which frustrates me. But, you know, at least he doesn't have a criminal record. Well, he was charged not just with possession of a gun, but he was charged with having 2 high-capacity magazines because there were 15 rounds. And that is exactly the same charge that David Gregory would have if the police and the Attorney General in the city would treat everybody fairly. And, you know, like you said in the beginning, you know, I asked the police department last Monday, I said, you know, I want to know how many people were charged with high-capacity magazines in 2012. And officially from the spokeswoman, from Kathy Lanier's spokeswoman, she said none. And I said, that sounds strange to me since I just interviewed someone who was charged with two charges. And then 5 days later, I suddenly get an email that it's actually 105 people were charged in 2012. So that tells me that the police department is trying to hide the fact that this is a common thing that people are arrested for, so that they don't have to arrest David Gregory. And like you said, the law is stupid. All these laws are stupid in D.C., but it doesn't mean that you're rich and famous. You don't have to abide by them.
Well, no, that's the thing. And you know, as I said, I'm sure if you go through that list of 105 people, there are probably some, you know, pretty bad actors on that list, but I'm guessing that this wasn't the only charge that they were facing. They may also have been facing felon in possession of a firearm.
Yep.
They may have been facing violent crime charges, such as armed robbery or assault. But I wonder, too, how many guys and gals there are out there with a similar story like Mr. Brinkley. Look, there are a lot of law enforcement officers. There are a lot of military personnel who go in and out of D.C. all the time.
Exactly.
And, you know, they may forget that they've got a magazine stuffed in their backpack or a duffel bag.
And it doesn't have to be attached to a firearm. And, like, you know, you've heard my story. I profiled just, again, recently, Adam Meckler, specialist and medic, Army medic, who had some forgotten rounds of ammunition in his backpack.
Right.
He was thrown in jail and now has a criminal record because of it.
Right, loose ammo. Loose ammo. No gun, no magazine. Just.
What is the danger here? And so I talked to him recently, and he's like, this is very unfair. I didn't know it was a law. Not that intent matters, but I didn't know it was a law, and I have a criminal record, and why isn't David Gregory, like me, on the gun offenders registry, which the city has? Why didn't he get a fine? Why doesn't he have a criminal record? You know, and all these guys are saying the same thing. All these people who get sucked into these stupid things, normally law-abiding people, and like you said, so many military coming through D.C. that this is so common with them. It's just so unfair, and I don't know how much longer Kathy Lanier is going to take before she admits that she's not charging him, but it's just going to be, I hope there's widespread outrage if she does that.
Well, we'll see what happens here, but, Emily, it's, again, this is just, it highlights the absurdity of these gun laws in the District of Columbia where, you've got two guys. Now, again, you can make the case that David Gregory shouldn't be prosecuted, like I said. In that case, then Mr. Brinkley should not have been prosecuted either.
Right.
If you think Mr. Brinkley should have been prosecuted, then why is David Gregory not been charged?
Right.
I just want someone to explain to me why these two cases are different, and no one will.
No, because the police are in lockdown, and I try every day to get more information on this quote investigation because I really don't think they're investigating. I can't even get them to tell me if they've even talked to David Gregory. Have they interviewed him? Name any other. My stories I profiled of people getting stuck with these stupid laws in D.C. How many people would the police leave for 3 weeks? If they, you go, and I talked to Chris Bowman, who you know very well, the head of the police union in D.C.,
yep.
And he said, he was outraged, and he said, I've never seen anything like it. We should have sent someone over right away and issued an arrest warrant. This is not normal. So, that's the head of the police union. So this is really Kathy Lanier, and who's the police chief in D.C., and the Attorney General's office, and they don't want to highlight how stupid their laws are by charging this high-profile anchor. And they also want to do what's politically astute for them and their careers and everything. And, I think the only thing that can be done is, the public, which I've heard they have been calling and emailing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department and saying you need to, treat everybody fairly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Emily, really appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you so much, and look forward to talking to you again soon. We'll let you get back to The Bachelor.
Thank you, Cam. I hope I get a rose.
Emily Miller of the Washington Times with us on the program.